It used to be weird to click a button on your smartphone and a car to turn up. And part of the challenge Uber had was convincing people that's a safe and normal experience to have. Marketing's never been harder and never been easier at the same time.
Today's guest, James Peach, is a global marketing leader with experience at powerhouse brands like Vinted, Uber, and Instant Drinks. He's a strategist whose insights on strategic marketing will blow you away.
I was Global Director of Brand at Vinted. It launched in the UK, people don't know this, and was a bit of a flop. Relaunched, now it's on a third of iPhones in the UK, recently valued at 5 billion. We are consuming thousands and thousands of adverts in a single day, but the amount that are mattering to us is tiny.
Have you ever felt stuck in your marketing efforts, struggling to stand out for the right reasons? James unpacks the 4 areas where every business struggles in marketing, and he delivers step-by-step guidance on how to overcome them. If you're ready to master the struggle and win, then this is your blueprint for success. This episode is sponsored by Mass Media, making outdoor advertising affordable for all.
It's not about marketing to consumers, it's about mattering to people.
ActionCOACH, the help you need to grow your business. Who is James Peach?
James Peach is a, I suppose, marketing leader, an adventurer, and more recently a keynote speaker in the worlds of resilience, leadership, high performance, and those types of areas. So James Peach has more recently developed quite a varied career, but it all started in the world of marketing, and that's where my foundations are.
I suppose you've got to be pretty resilient in marketing, haven't you? Because most marketing doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, you do. Because not only does most marketing not work, marketing is often the first thing to get cut in a business. Like there's all sorts of reasons why marketers have to be resilient. Marketing is ultimately a creative profession. And where does creativity come from? It comes from your brain. And you are judged on that creativity, on those ideas on a daily basis, whether that's by the general public, by people in the company, by the marketing manager, reviewing the work. And when people feed back on creativity, they're ultimately feeding back on the ideas that came out of your brain. And so like creativity itself is something that requires loads of resilience. And what is there? 40 billion pounds spent on marketing each year in the UK. And we've probably seen between the two of us 5,000 to 10,000 adverts today. All of that money wasted on all those adverts we haven't even noticed. And the way that the digital marketing world works is incremental improvements. So it's data-led. You have you have some art, you have some digital creative, you test it, A versus B works a bit better, you work out why, you make that slightly better, then you test it again, then you test it again. So even creativity in the modern world is a very data-led approach. It's slightly depressing to some of us who want to dream of making Guinness ad after Cadbury's ad after, the gorilla or whatever it is. We want to make these amazing ads. But the truth of the modern world is advertising is moving into that more A or B testing approach.
Constantly. Someone summarised it to me like this recently, and I really love this summary. I mean, do a little marketing, so A/B testing, so do a little bit, learn a lot, and then do a little bit more. Yeah. Rather than just throw it all in there and then learn a lot from how much you've put in.
Yeah, because ultimately you have to keep learning, and you have to have a data point from every improvement or every incremental decision that you make. So yeah, it is a slow progress. However, you can sometimes make leaps. I mean, we in the brand department make leaps based on insight more than data, which is a different type of leap to make. As in, we're there trying to work out what the unique need is for the consumer, less than what will make a consumer stop scrolling and buy this product. Right. We're trying to work out what maybe how more emotionally we can fill a need for them. It's sort of a different approach that's required when you use different marketing channels. When you're not just trying to get someone to stop scrolling, you're actually trying to explain to them something maybe more complicated, more complex, to get them to emote. Which is, again, back to the sort of more traditional advertising style. There's a quote that I heard at a conference about 15 years ago, and I've thought about it and repeated it so much that I think it's mine. I think maybe I said it. Now, categorically, I didn't say it, but I've sort of decided it's mine now. And the quote is that it's not about marketing to consumers, it's about mattering to people. And not marketing to consumers, mattering to people. And I think that's the most honest and interesting, clear way of explaining what marketing has to do, because I think we forget that, especially in this data-driven world. I think we can see consumers as aliens, as these sort of data points that we're just trying to stop using their thumb on their phones and to press a button and purchase a thing. But actually, what we're really trying to do is matter to a human being. And mattering to a human being, like the example I gave in both of us having seen 5,000-10,000 adverts today, is really hard.
Honestly, I mean, that blew my mind when he said that. I didn't know whether you'd made a mistake in saying those numbers. 5,000 to 10,000 I might have seen today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously it depends where you live and whether you're wandering around central London.
And how much you're spending on your phone.
How much you're spending on your phone, if you've been on the tube today, how many ads you've walked past, if you've been watching the TV. But in general, we are consuming thousands and thousands of adverts in a single day, but we're noticing, or the amount that are mattering to us is really tiny.
You heard of Rory Sutherland? Of course you have, of course.
Of course I have,
part of the Ogilvy group. He says like powerful quotes and stuff like that. I couldn't tell you if he said that one or not, but I keep seeing things and it does grab my attention when he says stuff. He said one the other day, he says, I think some big businesses and particularly the politics, he says he thinks they've lost what marketing's about now, because if there's any remote chance that they don't know what result they're going to get from this marketing, they'll just say no to it. And ultimately, you're testing everything.
Yep, there's some truth in that. It's circumstantial to some extent. Would you accuse Red Bull of that? Probably not. Would you accuse, I don't know, tons of maybe the more established older brands that have really have a position inside of our head? But certainly with maybe more modern tech brands, you could say that if they don't know the result, it's unlikely they're going to invest. I was global director of brand at Vinted for the last 3-4 years, and part of Vinted's business model is hyper efficiency.
It's amazing. I mean, in the past, we'd have just donated to charity shop type thing, and now we're making money.
It's Vinted's an amazing story. It's an interesting story about Vinted's based in Lithuania, which is a small country in the Baltics. Vinted was the first unicorn in Lithuania. They're very proud of the business, and it comes from a very humble beginning to now being recently valued at 5 billion. It's an incredible organisation. And it launched in the UK. People don't know this. It launched in the UK, I believe, in 2017, 2018, and was a bit of a flop.
Yeah.
The marketing was not efficient enough, cost too much money, and so they stopped. The apps still existed, but not many people really used it. And they came back again, I think, in 2021.
When you joined.
Obviously, when I joined, everything started going in the right direction. Relaunched, and now it's on a third of iPhones in the UK, probably on its way to a half fairly soon. It's an incredible business story. Ultimately, the relaunch and the re-success could be put down to a number of things, but one of those big things is the maturity of the market in the UK, that we are now sort of ready to buy and sell clothes to each other. The UK previously, unlike some other European countries like France and Germany, where flea markets and buying and selling vintage clothes on a daily basis is a very normal thing, has been for years. In the UK, we were a bit sort of late to the party. We were worried if, who had been wearing it before, if it was dirty or whatever it is. And now it's become really fashionable to buy something unique that you can't get in the shops anywhere. And so it's just taken off. Fashion is the second biggest polluter on planet Earth. It's the problems from fashion, the pollutants from fashion are bigger than the airline industry and the shipping industry combined.
Is that right?
It's absolutely massive. And Vinted is a wonderful example of a company that is solely focused on addressing a real global issue. And it really is solely focused on that, from the CEO all the way down to the bottom. All 2,000 employees of that company are all there to try and solve this problem. And it's doing it in a profitable business way that shows that business and purpose can work together. Yeah, it's an incredible organisation.
Incredible story as well. I mean, what's it been like working there?
It's been wonderful. It's been very inspiring. It's challenging. So my background before that was Uber, and it was innocent drinks, which also have purposes, but I suppose pursued them in different ways. And they all had very similar things about them, those three companies. They are all totally obsessed with the consumer, for example, and totally obsessed with solving a problem for the consumer and how their business plays a role in that consumer's life. But those three companies do it in completely different ways. And so going from the way Innocent did it to the way Uber did it to the way Vinted did it was quite the journey. Vinted is all about efficiency. It's all about spending marketing money efficiency. They own their own servers, for example, and in order to save money, they do everything they can to make the transaction moment with the consumer the cheapest it can possibly be, to make the product the best it can possibly be, to ultimately drive growth. It's insane.
I mean, we should all learn from that. Warren Buffett said this. I mean, this one's an old one, but it gets in your head when people of that stature make comments like this. And he had this little bit of a pause. What's the most important thing in your business? And it was Warren and Charlie Munger, his sidekick. And then everyone's thinking cash flow, or getting them a team, or whatever they're thinking. And he says, your customers. The customer is the most important thing to any business. And, you know, what you're saying about those three brands is customer-centric. And getting that into the forefront of your mind before you start marketing is going to make you a better marketer as well, empathy-wise, isn't it, for the customer?
Yeah, I mean, everything in marketing starts with the audience. You've got to know who you're talking to before you start any single project. And so, yeah, everything starts with the customer ultimately. But those three different businesses have addressed the customer obsession, as it was called at Uber, in completely different ways. If you walked into the Innocent offices today in Kensal Rise in London, you would see something they call the Wall of Love, which is this wall covered in letters, handwritten letters, tapestries, cartons, handmade cartons, all of this stuff that's been sent to Innocent from consumers, which is praising them for their wonderful drinks or wonderful stuff that they've done. Innocent's a business. It's a profitable business owned by Coca-Cola. And people feel so strongly about it that they are taking the time to make a tapestry to send in. Like, it's crazy how their connection with their consumers works. And it's because Innocent really, really gets the idea that if the consumers stop buying the drinks, then the whole thing falls apart. All of the sustainability, all the environmentalism, all of the incredible pursuits that Innocent have across their business. It really is fundamentally beautiful example of how to run a real purpose-led business. But none of it exists if the consumers don't love it.
What impact does that philosophy have on the marketing then?
Well, it's a really interesting question. Really, the reason it's an interesting question is because Innocent as a business grew organically. They did things because they thought it was the right thing to do.
Right.
And they always wanted to leave things a little bit better than they found them. That's a direct quote from the founders, who wanted to leave things better than they found them. And because of that approach, whether that's where they bought their fruit from or how much recycled plastic goes into their bottles, how they treat their employees, all of these, their 10% of their profits go to charity, all of these beautiful things, they happened organically. So when you get a marketing team in who have to try and market this, it's quite hard to know where to start because there's all these wonderful things. But it's interesting, over the years, Innocent have moved from this brand positioning to that brand positioning. And I think it's because they came so late to trying to articulate actually why they're important in people's life. There's just too much. There's too much fuzz, too much noise in there, so many things to talk about. Whilst Innocent more in the last few years, or certainly the last 5-6 years, have really come to understand that the real reason people buy an Innocent smoothie is because they're standing in front of a fixture and they're thirsty. And all of that beautiful stuff is secondary, critically important, to the way you feel and the way you interact with the brand, but ultimately people just want to quench their thirst. But that's why I think it's an interesting question, because it was difficult for Innocent to work out what its place is in the world, because there's so many great stories to tell.
Look, and this is 3 really good examples, and I want to ask a specific question on each 3 of these, but I want to also acknowledge that small businesses can learn from these big businesses, and the majority of listeners listening to this conversation now are small businesses. They are in control of the marketing. This is resonating, this customer focus thing right now. So you've worked at Innocent, Uber, Vinted. What are the biggest mistakes that you saw them make on marketing?
There's some big thoughts on this, and thoughts that I hope will resonate and be useful to some of your listeners that work or own smaller businesses. And a really clear one is doing too much. Right. There are limited resources. Resources are money, time, and people. Those are the 3 parts of resource. And
was it Uber or Innocent, or all of them doing too much at times?
At times, all of them, but would be more specific, I think, would probably be Innocent.
Right.
Is my point of view, that at times do too much. Vinted's a great example of not doing too much.
Right.
But so ultimately, where there's yes, you only have so much resource, which is money, people, and time. And there is a billion things you can do with your marketing. And there's people getting in touch with you on LinkedIn and trying to sell you their services day in, day out. Of course there is.
There's a spamming problem there, isn't there?
Exactly. But the truth of the matter is, it's all about it. When you're a smaller business, it's about cutting through. It's about creating brand awareness, which is people knowing that you exist. Yeah. And that costs money to do it at mass level, or if it doesn't cost loads of money, it costs loads of time and thought and creativity. So trying to do lots of little things is not a great approach. It's literally just not an efficient way to do marketing.
That's a really good point.
And so if you have a marketing plan, it's so tempting to have 20 things in 2025, but really you should probably have 1, 3, 5 tops. Like you should put all your resource behind the things you think you're going to win.
This episode is sponsored by Mass Media. Mass Media supports businesses of all brands and sizes with their network of digital roadside, bus shelter, and retail billboards, making outdoor advertising affordable for all. Extend your audience and amplify your reach using premium outdoor advertising with Mass Media. Now back to the podcast.
At Uber, they call it big, bold bets. What are our big, bold bets? Because if they're not big, bold bets, then they're probably not things you should be doing.
There is an issue that trying to do too much causes burnout, stress, worry, not seeing the kids, feeling pressure all of the time. And of course, when you try and do too much, genuinely, those that try and do everything, you only end up doing it average anyway. But you do 1, 3, or 5, you got a chance of really making something happen with you. Why did you say 1, 3, or 5 and not between 1 and 5?
Do you know why? It's because that is an Innocent thing, 1, 3, or 5. They always said everyone can remember 1 thing. Most people can remember 3 things. Some people can remember 5 things. But no one can remember more than 5 things. So it's just a small sort of framework, I suppose, that's ingrained in the back of my brain somewhere. But it is true. Like, you need to do a few things well. That's how you will cut through. And if you look at Innocent, just to continue using Innocent example, the Big Knit, which is where they put little woolly hats on bottles and give a portion of the sales to Age UK, that started many, many years ago. And it's been running, and they now knit more than, I believe, 2 million hats across Europe on a yearly basis. Started by an idea that someone had in the company, a guy called New Adam. There was already an Adam working at Innocent, and he was the newer one. That's his name was New Adam. But it's an example of backing that idea. Some years it was the only campaign we ran. We put all our eggs in that one basket, and we made that big bold bet. And it cuts through on shelf, it cuts through on TV. It's a very visual campaign with a really interesting story. So that's what I mean. Interesting, when I was hiring people across Europe at Vinted, some of them would mention that they had studied the Big Knit campaign as a case study in university when they were studying business and marketing. And I led the Big Knit campaign for 3 or 4 years whilst I was there. So hugely proud feeling to know that it's getting. But it's a great example of a brand learning or understanding that to really cut through, you have to put all of your resource, all of your eggs in one basket to really have a chance of making an impression on consumers.
Yeah, it's commitment then as well, isn't it?
It is.
It is real commitment. And, you know, the earlier point that we made about, even though it's all eggs in one basket, this is the thing. The campaign is run over a period of time. So they'll be testing a bit and then seeing which bit's working, then tweaking it. I'm guessing all of that's still going on throughout that period.
Yeah, there's certainly in the modern advertising world, it's certainly a process of incremental improvements and test and learn. I mean, the whole marketing industry
A/B, test, learn, do more of this.
Yeah, but at some stage, if you've got a good idea, like creativity does win, especially in the sort of marketing campaign world. If you've got a great idea, it can win. I'm thinking of Uber, for example. Uber wasn't and this takes some thinking, but it used to be weird to click a button on your smartphone and a car to turn up. The idea that you could click a button on your phone and it would change reality. It would make a human being drive a dangerous vehicle towards you and you get in. Like that's it feels so normal now, but it wasn't that many years ago, 10 years ago, where that was a strange thing to happen. And part of the challenge Uber had was convincing people that's a safe and normal experience to have. Less so in London, but certainly across the UK.
Yeah, in the rural places. I mean, I think it's going out now to most places, isn't it?
It's
Uber.
Yeah, it's scaling across the UK and many countries has been quite controversial. I was up in Aberdeen talking to some businesses a few weeks ago, and it's just, I believe, about to launch there, and that's been quite a controversial move. 10 years after it launched in the UK, it's only just reaching a great city like Aberdeen.
Has Uber been going 10 years?
Uber has been going, around the 10-year mark, yes.
5 years ago, I might not have known who they were.
Yeah.
So they were still creeping up.
Absolutely.
And now the household name, everyone knows them. Everyone's got the app on the phone.
Yeah. And to the point around like creativity wins, a lot of the way some of the way they found to get people to download Uber and use it for the first time when people weren't used to ordering a taxi on a smartphone because they liked calling up a taxi company and speaking to a human being. They introduced things like Uber kittens, Uber ice cream. So you download the app, tap a button, and Uber arrives with some kittens in it for your workplace or some ice creams on a hot day. They did Uber Giving, where you could put in food or old clothes to give to refugee charities. But what this was doing was making people download the app for the first time, clicking the button, seeing the Uber experience, and then after that, people would use it as a taxi opportunity.
Yeah.
So yes, there's this world of like incrementalism and test and learn in marketing, but sometimes great ideas solve business problems.
I mean, it's great technology behind the scenes that's running all of this, and now the map, it shows you where the car is. The driver's just sat there. The diary's just been filled up all day long for them. It's just happening, isn't it? It's just a symphony of efficiency.
That's beautiful. It is a symphony of efficiency. It's incredible. And in fact, Rory Sutherland, I've heard him speak about this, which is people, before Uber, people didn't mind waiting a long time for a vehicle. It was the uncertainty of when it would arrive. So people don't mind waiting 15 minutes as long as they know when it's going to arrive. And that's what the maps brought. The maps were, I can literally see it coming towards me, rather than sat there with uncertainty of this general 15-minute promise that may or may not occur.
There's a comfort in that, isn't there? There's a comfort in knowing.
Absolutely. But to the point we were talking about earlier around customer obsession, Uber's customer obsession, so innocence was one of brand and promise and all this sort of beautiful connection. For Uber, it's about customer experience. It's about making that journey time shorter, making the work for the driver better. It's all around that. That's where their focus is day in, day out, trying to make the experience for the driver and the rider incrementally better at every opportunity. We no longer have to use cash to take a taxi ride with Uber. We get all the safety features. We get, if you were on the outskirts of London and you were having to wait and try and flag down a black cab at 2 a.m. on a Thursday night, you had no chance. And now Uber's made the world a lot safer for that reason. So, but their customer obsession is making that customer experience as great as it can be. It's why surge pricing is a thing, because surge pricing means more drivers go into an area where the pricing's higher. That means the customer experience of your ability to get a taxi is much better. They come much quicker. So everything's focused on the customer.
How does that sort of transpire into marketing? If their obsession is customer experience, do they market the customer experience?
Yeah, they do in different ways.
Right.
I mean, the most powerful marketing creative at Uber for years and years and years, which was incredibly frustrating because I came in from Innocent wanting to have loads of ideas, be really creative and really impress people. And it was a damn map of a phone and a car. And the car is just driving towards the phone, because that's the sort of magic of Uber, is that you press that button and you see on the map the car start moving towards you. And now, and I know again, it's weird to even think that it's magic, but back then it really was. And so in the marketing, all we had to do was bring the customer experience to life.
Just show people that map and that car going towards them. And
yeah, we did some live out of home in Liverpool Street Station, I remember, which was the actual Ubers live mapped on a screen in Liverpool Street Station, and people loved it. But Uber's growth, much like Vinted's, is just the quality of the product. If Vinted turned its marketing off tomorrow, stopped spending marketing, it would still grow just a lot, just at a slower pace. And the same with Uber. It's the quality of the product and they're both examples of really sticky products. Generally, if people download them and use them for the first time, they'll continue to use them. So it's
repeat customers, isn't it?
It really is. To your point you said earlier from Warren Buffett, everything starts with the consumer. It definitely does. But when you meet that need for the consumer, it's that product that has met that need which really leads the way.
Is bottom line profitability all the way, isn't it?
It is.
All right. So when I asked you that question about doing too much, about the mistakes, you said actually doing too much. Is there any other mistakes that any of these guys have made?
From a marketing point of view, like marketing is ultimately about is a lot about spending money, and spending money inefficiently, I would say, is a mistake. And spending money that is not ultimately going to achieve a significant result, reach lots of people or make them feel differently. And you do see inefficiency in the way.
Are there any rules then to sort of that we can put in place to make sure that we do spend money efficiently? What are the rules that you'd have in a marketing plan for either launching a product or a service?
To ensure you're not spending money.
Yeah, well, to make sure that it's going to be efficient. You're not going to fall for this trap. You said they've all spent money inefficiently in times.
They have. Vinted probably not, but Uber certainly, and Innocent certainly. And inefficiency is a battle for marketeers on a daily basis, because there are so many opportunities to do marketing. Ultimately, the rule is you can. So there's no hard and fast rule, but I work right now with some smaller brands, and what we used to call working spend. So working spend is defined as the spend that is actually putting your marketing in front of a human being. So spend that is actually paying for media space in a newspaper or out of home or TV or social media, whatever it is, but the one the spend that's actually putting it out there. What you find is a lot of businesses don't have a lot of working spend left in the budget, because a lot of it's gone elsewhere, on agency costs, on photography shoots, on creatives, on freelancers, or whatever that might be. And what I'm working with some of the businesses on right now is how to increase the amount of working spend and decrease the amount of non-working spend, because it's the working spend that actually gets your product out into the ether. And if you're spending all your money on agencies and this, that, and the other, it's just inefficient ultimately.
What constitutes working spend?
So working spend is money that is putting your marketing in front of a human being. So like it's media spend ultimately, or it could be used for sampling or whatever.
Hiring studios and all this kind of...
Hiring studios, hiring film crews, hiring freelancers, hiring an agent, a PR agency, a creative agency, or this agency or that agency. Like all of that ultimately is non-working spend. And you find that businesses can get trapped in a world where all of their budget goes on that and very little of it goes on actually.
You know, people are computing how much percentage, how much of my money is going on that, and how much. Well, is there a healthy balance to be made here? Is there an 80-20 and 80% literally working? Any more than 20%, that's inefficient.
Yeah, so I would want 60 to 80% to be working spend, but sometimes that's hard to get to. And also it's important to note it's not right for everyone. For example, you might have an absolute killer organic social media strategy, and that costs you quite a lot of non-working spend. You're having to pay for this, that, or the other in order to make your organic social media strategy work. Then you're getting viral videos left, right, and centre. Then that's great. That's work. That's doing its job. Yeah. That's not working spend. You're not having to pay to get that out there. But I would say that's fairly unique and specific. This is more sort of a broad brush, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I've just done a little bit of work, and I've seen someone that's paid a very famous celebrity, 6-figure amount, very sizable amount, for a product launch. You know, that's at this stage, that's non-working spend, isn't it? And I'm just thinking in my head, if the ideal is between 60 and 80% needs to be on the working spend, he probably needs to put £500,000 behind the advertising behind it.
I mean, potentially, but again, that's any investment in a celebrity like that is high risk.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the right decision. It might absolutely accelerate that business like they're hoping it will. But I've been working for a business recently where we've declined a massive amount for a celebrity because the risk we felt was just too high.
How did you calculate the risk?
It's difficult. It's a mixture of art and science. When a celebrity is representing your brand, you're effectively saying, this is the type of person that our brand is. That's our perfect consumer, that person. And so you're relying on that celebrity's reputation. Yeah, I think so. Especially maybe, I think so. You're certainly saying we're happy with this person representing us. And so you're relying on the reputation of that person. You're relying on their commitment to actually, like I've done work with celebrities where they've turned up for, you've paid a hell of a lot of money, hundreds of thousands or more, and they turn up for the shoot that, once you've paid the invoice, suddenly their interest in the project starts to decline quite quickly. They've turned up for the shoot and they've not really been up for what they had agreed to originally, and things start to fall apart quite quickly. So it's a high risk business, but it's also super high reward if you can get the right person representing your business in the right way.
Yeah, look, this is really powerful stuff. I did want to go back to something that you said earlier on. You said actually inefficiency is a battle for marketers on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I just love that point. I want to acknowledge that because it's a battle. The inefficiency is a battle if they're aware of the numbers on a daily basis. It's constantly on the mind. And I see a lot of businesses where they're not battling that inefficiency. It's just, it's being inefficient in the background, and that inefficiency is creeping up. I'm seeing the battle, the fight, where are we going with this type conversation as a really positive thing.
Absolutely. And for me, it comes back, and I'm sorry to be introducing another battle, but it feels quite negative. But a lot of this comes back to what I think is another significant battle within marketing, which is the strategy battle. I think a lot of, especially smaller businesses, shoot from the hip in marketing, and that is a really inefficient way to operate. Ultimately, everything has to come back to a plan, an understanding of what the problem is you're trying to solve and what your plan is to go and solve it. How are you going to apply the small resources that you have? And that's really important. And as a team leader, as a director over these years, I'm quite obsessed with strategy. And at the moment, I would get everyone in my team to write their own individual strategies on an annual basis, looking at the situational reality of their role, putting their objectives in place, and then their approach of how they're going to achieve those objectives, a time plan and a resource plan. It sounds like a lot. It's not. It's one page.
It's music to my ears, actually. And I'm really pleased that you're saying all these points, because it's absolutely real. You know, the marketing department is, I'm going to be bold with this, is the most important department in any business. All right? It's the, a lot of people will say it's the finance, the profitability, but, you ain't get the customers coming through. You ain't get any profits anyway. And even once you've got the customer, marketing continues long after you've got the customer, doesn't it, for repeat business? So definitely right now, because productivity is so low, the environment that we're in as an economy is dreadful. The levels of UK debt are at an all-time high. Solution seems to be borrowing more money all of the time. Productivity, we're ranked number 11 in Europe for levels of productivity. We're not making enough profits. Every listener right now wants more profits. What's the solution to that? Better marketing. You're in charge of that. You don't forget the economy that we're in. You're in charge of this. And there's a battle on our hands here. Battle with strategy, battle with efficiency. Yeah. And until people embrace that battle, they're going to be hurt too much.
Yeah. It's
that hard. Because it's never been changing this fast neither. I know I'm a bit of a passionate outburst here.
I love it.
But marketing's never been changing this fast.
No. And also, marketing's never been harder and never been easier at the same time.
Tell me the easier bit.
Because there's so many opportunities, free opportunities to market right now. The emails, blogs, organic social, whatever. There's so many opportunities to reach people for free or for low cost.
Yeah.
So there's more opportunities. So it's never been easier. Whilst at the same time, it's never been harder for the reasons you've outlined. And so for me, having a strategy, having a plan that all ladders up to what the business is trying to achieve is utterly critical. Like, so many businesses don't have a clear plan. And clear plans are interesting from a leadership point of view because for two reasons. Firstly, clarity is the single most motivating thing you can give an employee, without doubt. What's their job and what do you expect them to do? What do you expect them to achieve? And I've led teams. At Vinted, I came into a team that was pretty unhappy. It had quite a low engagement score. And it was because there wasn't strong clarity of whose role was what, and there was a bit of crossover in between these roles. The moment we gave people individual role descriptions, so they understood exactly what their job was, and then gave them the clarity over what we needed them to achieve, it completely changed. And that's what a strategy does. That it gives you that clarity.
I know my role. I know what's expected of me. I can see the impact this is having on the business. I am now motivated. Exactly.
And the second thing a strategy gives you is empowerment. It stops micromanagement. Because if I've written a strategy as an employee, you know my plan, you know how I'm going to get there, so you can leave me to it. So that's another thing strategy is really,
quite
really
nice as well, isn't it, for the accountability piece?
It's complete accountability.
So let's say there's some small businesses and they've got 4 or 5 people in their marketing team.
Yeah.
Should each person in the marketing team come up with their annual strategy for the year?
So I know this sounds ridiculous, but this is the sort of hill I'm afraid I'm going to die on. But an annual strategy should come from the whole team or the marketing leadership. But individual strategies for their roles, I would ask each employee to have an individual strategy which ladders up to the marketing strategy. Yes.
Yep. So they produce the strategy for an individual component of the big picture.
Exactly, which must ladder up to what the marketing strategy is looking to achieve.
Yeah, but what we're saying from a leadership perspective is we create that as a team, that big one, so everyone's included. Yeah. The type thing, everyone knows that, and then individually, they've got to come up with their own strategy as well. I mean, that's a good action point for the listeners here. Now, can I talk about standing out?
You can, yeah, definitely.
Purple cow kind of stuff, Seth Godin,
Yeah.
It's really tough to stand out these days, isn't it? We've got everyone online, over all this face-to-camera nonsense that's going on, advice monkeys all over the place, and everyone's filling these social channels. How does a business stand out?
Starting your own business was an exciting time, wasn't it? You knew you'd have to work hard, but you did it for your future. Lately, though, you're missing out on the important things in life. Time seems to be slipping by. So make the change. Claim back your work-life balance and grow your business today.
It's really challenging.
That's another. This is another negative, by the way. This is another battle.
It is another battle, and I'm gonna turn it into our third battle of this conversation in a second. What I'd like to say first is acknowledge that it's difficult. Acknowledge that content has become a volume game. In many instances, especially on platforms like TikTok, a lot of businesses are finding success through the volume of content they're making over sometimes the quality of it. And you find that huge examples all over the place. For the businesses that I work at the moment, one of the challenges we have is churning out enough content on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And so, but to the point you said around how do you stand out, how do you become distinct? Distinct is one of the, I suppose, most critical parts of brand marketing, in understanding what your position is, understand how you stand out from the rest. And when you are distinct, when people think of you as different in their mind, it ultimately reduces the amount of money you need to spend on working spend on media, because you cut through in people's brains because you're different and you stand out to them. And that's really what most businesses or brands are trying to achieve. But the third battle that I think occurs here, which is the challenge to businesses, is the battle of fear of failure, which is a real problem, I think, in marketing teams. We had a fear of failure battle, I would suggest, at Innocent a lot of the time. We would often write in briefs so that we want this work to be brave. We would use the word brave a lot. But I think we were lots of bright people who had come up through school and university and through jobs and had always tried to get things right and not get things wrong. And knowing that if we get things wrong, you might get demoted or fired or lose your job or look stupid in front of your colleagues. And so we had, I think, quite a cultural fear of failure, that we didn't want to get things wrong. And one of the ways we started to solve that was at a marketing meeting every week, we would have to come in and give one example of how we'd failed that week or that period. And so over time, everyone talking about failure started to normalise the idea of failure.
We learn from the mistakes quickly.
Exactly.
And people are not worried when they're going to bed at night thinking, am I going to get sacked tomorrow? It's like,
exactly.
I know that I'm going to be given the freedom and space to actually say, look, this was a mistake.
Yeah.
And by the way, you don't need to make that mistake now because I've made it. We're celebrating it almost.
And if you start celebrating making mistakes, you reduce the fear of failure, because failure is just normalised.
Yeah.
And the speed at which that turns into curiosity and creativity is alarming, because people are no longer worried about getting things wrong, so they'll try different stuff. And you asked the question about how do you stand out, how do you be distinct? And I'm really going back to I'm taking it 5 steps back, but you need a team or an individual, a group of people who are not scared of getting stuff wrong. That's the foundations of standing out, is creating a culture where people can take risks.
That risk, it's being bold as well. Well, it's the same thing, isn't it? It's like, the purple cow. I mean, you see a purple cow in the field, don't you? You see that one, but who wants to paint themselves purple type thing? Well, you got to be bold. You've got to take risks. You could argue that the biggest risk to any business is not taking risks, because ultimately that's paralysis. If you're not taking risks, you're standing still whilst other people are. And so you could argue that not taking risks is the biggest risk to any of the businesses listening today. You've put risk in my head, actually. I think there's a risk that people only listen to this once. And I'm speaking to the listeners right now. There is that much content that's being shared right now that's not being shared anywhere else. I read the stuff. I've read the books, and I'm constantly speaking to people. I've got 4 battles that I've acknowledged here. The inefficiency battle is a daily thing. Get used to it. The strategy battle. There is a strategy battle. There's the standing out battle.
Yeah.
And then there's the fear of failure battle.
Yeah.
There's 4 that I've counted 4.
Okay. Yeah.
I like knowing I'm up for battle now. Honestly, I'm equipped now to develop my marketing team stronger. We're not finished yet because I do want to mention storytelling. And of course, there's people like Donald Miller that wrote incredible books on, and he's created an incredible framework for businesses, big and small, an SB7 framework of telling stories. And we've all been marketed through Disney on stories and all that kind of thing, and stories speak to our heart. Is that changing in marketing right now? Is it still one of the most important things, if not the most important things in, what did you say earlier on? It's not about marketing to consumers, it's about mattering to people. Storytelling, does that help to matter to people?
Does storytelling help matter to people? Absolutely, without a doubt it does. However, it's under challenge in the modern marketing landscape.
It's just accepted.
Well, because most of the advertising, you've got to tell the story within 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Like in most online advertising, you've got to show the logo.
Right, we've got a fifth battle now.
Yeah, we do.
In a short amount of time.
Sorry, I'm bringing so many battles to you today, but it is, you've got to, a lot of the framework that a lot of these marketing teams work off is you must see the product, the logo, and mention the brand name within the first 3 seconds of an ad online. That's an example. They may well differ, and then you've got to get to the features, the benefits, the product, etc., etc. There's not a lot of storytelling in there, and so you find people obsessed with the hook. They're trying to stop your thumb scrolling, and so they're obsessed with what that hook is that's going to stop the thumb. And that has, you could argue, certainly, we're only talking about the digital channel here, but that has certainly reduced the way you're telling stories. You're up front just trying to do something weird and wonderful to get them to stop.
Clickbaity
exactly
type thing, which is going off brand.
It is, but that really depends on, I suppose, what your channel plan is.
Or off core message.
Yeah.
To grab attention some quirky way.
Yeah.
I'm guessing, but you correct me if I'm wrong. You're the expert here. 9 times out of 10, you going off to keep them staying on there and stay on message. That is a challenge for a marketer, isn't it?
It is, but it's possible. And sometimes it's about where you're telling your story. Like maybe that channel of thumb stopping digital media is not where you're going to tell your story. Your story's got to be a bit different there. So you've got to find where you can tell your story. But then there's also examples of brands that do a fabulous job of doing the thumb stopping and getting their story told at the same time, because they're Red Bull.
I'm only saying that, but you'll know if that's correct or not.
Red Bull's, I don't know, is Red Bull a storyteller? Red Bull is about sponsorship and backing this sort of way of life and this risk taking. Like, I don't know if it's telling a story, but not in a sort of old school way.
No, it's not.
I suppose. But we see a lot of brands that have used, and a lot of really small businesses like independent restaurant businesses who have done incredible job of telling their story through TikTok and bringing the story to life of how they've opened their restaurant and the behind the scenes stuff. It's interesting. The companies I work for at the moment, without failure, the best performing social media posts are behind the scenes. They want to see the people in the office. They want to see the decisions being made. They want to see the factory. They want to see behind the scenes. And TikTok brings that to life. Companies like Surreal, the cereal brand, Mouse, the phone case brand, a lot of these modern businesses are doing a phenomenal job of telling their story through TikTok and Instagram in a way that is hyper entertaining and engages people. Some brands, and brands that I've worked for are guilty of this. They seem to implicitly think that you and I wake up in the morning, go on our phone, check Instagram to see what those brands are doing. We don't. We don't do that. We don't do that at all. We go and see what our friends and our family are doing.
Exactly.
And if we see those brands, they're getting in the way. But the truth is that social media is the new TV. It's an entertainment channel. And if you want to be on there as a brand, you've got to be entertaining. So you've got to find a way of telling your story in a way that entertains people, gives people joy, gives people a feeling. because that's the only way you're going to cut through. You cannot give them a sales pitch because people aren't sat waiting to hear from what you've got to say.
Yeah, and let's just repeat that. You cannot give them a sales pitch. And I learned that from Stephen Bartlett's team, actually. Get the eyes first. Get people seeing you first.
Yeah.
If you try and go for converting, no one's going to see you.
No.
You know, you get the views first, get the followers second, get them seeing you more and more, and then starting to follow you. And then once you've built up the following patiently, a big following, then you begin to convert that later on. It goes in that kind of order.
I'd agree with that completely. And for small businesses, followers can be quite a vanity metric.
Yeah.
Really, you just want people to know you exist. And that's the main thing. That's the main thing you're trying to achieve.
It's quite a powerful statement, that is, actually. It's resonating, you know. I mean, I run businesses as well. The main thing is you just want people to know you exist. Why is that the main thing?
Because if they don't know you exist, they can't take an action. They can't feel a certain way about you. Can't be distinct if people don't know you. Like this whole thing of being distinct, cutting through, like that's a method of getting people to know that you exist. And there's one thing just getting people to know you exist, like becoming famous. We can all be famous. I could take my clothes off and run down the street and it'd be in the Evening Standard or whatever. But so there's one thing about just getting awareness, people know you exist. But there's another thing, people knowing you exist and knowing why you exist, or what it is that you bring to the world. And if I run down the street naked, they're just going to know I exist, but they're not going to know like what it is behind that. And it's the same for businesses. Like not only have you got to get to a place where people have heard of you, or the salience is what we call it in brand marketing, like unprompted awareness. It's great that they know that you exist, but they've also got to know something about you, what the benefit or the feature is about you that is something that's unique.
All right. So number one, they've got to know you exist.
Yeah.
Number two, they've got to know why you exist. Yeah. What's number three?
Probably more specifically, why the why you exist, how that relates to them, why that's important in their life.
And number four, keep going, because this is genius.
Well, then you get to a stage of, so someone knows you exist, knows why you exist, knows why that what you have resonates with them.
Yeah.
Then hopefully at that stage, what you're offering resonates with them so much that they are prone for conversion. They are there ready to buy your product.
So then we get, I like that, because we've probably got a little bit more of a tangible process than that one I shared with you from Stephen Bartlett's team, actually. Know why you exist. Know you exist first. Mm-hmm. Know why you exist second.
Yeah.
Know how and why that even relates to them.
Yes.
Third.
The consumer, yeah.
And then now we can start thinking about conversions.
Exactly. Now you can start thinking about conversions because you've got someone who knows what you are, knows what you're about, and knows why you're important to them.
Now, the reality is that all these people that know you exist, they're all going to be at different stages of that, and you've got to know what stage they're at.
You have, yeah.
So you've got to be speaking to the right people as well.
You have, and you've got to find where those people are. You need to find where your low-hanging fruit audience is, which can be difficult depending on the size of your business, therefore the access you have to data. If you're a tech business, you've got tons of data. If you're a food and beverages business, you've got much less. And so understanding where your core consumer is and where you can go and find someone who cares that you exist, cares why you're important, and cares how you are important to them. That's a difficult job to do.
Well, look, that whole conversion piece, that fourth piece, is everything before that branding. And then conversion is more lead gen.
I think that's too simplistic. I think branding's through. Of course, I think branding's through everything. I'm a brand guy, but branding does seep through everything. And so, I mean, everything is brand. Literally, employees are brand. The building that you have your business in is ultimately brand. The T-shirt that you wear is brand. Like, as in how your employees interact with other people, that is ultimately a representative of your business, your brand. So like lead generation is as much as a part of the brand. It has to be thought about from a brand point of view, as in what's the tone of voice, how is this your lead generation coming across to potential consumers. Like I'm obviously going to say this because of my background, but everything is brand.
No, look, you've got our attention. Everyone's listening right now. You've earned the right to say whatever you want, and we're in your hands here. So every employee is the brand. Yeah,
because brand is ultimately what people think of your business. It's an idea in your head. If I called out 5 brands to you right now, you would have a different idea about all 5 of them.
So if you were to look at my business,
yeah,
and I told you the name of every employee,
yeah,
and you went on LinkedIn,
yeah,
what would you look for if you were going to audit my brand? What would you look for in those employees? What kind of clues would you be picking up on?
So what an interesting question. So if I was to go on individual employees' LinkedIn pages, I would want, as a representation of your company, I would want them to be well kept, in that they put effort into the LinkedIn page. I would want an image that makes them look, professional, but not. It doesn't have to be like in a photography studio, but someone who looks trustworthy, someone with integrity. Like they look like an honest person. That's what you'd, and also like a relatable person. A lot of marketing is relatability. It's you being able to think, oh yeah, no, that's the type of person. That's the type of brand for me. So if I go on the LinkedIn page, I'd want to see someone I could relate to. I'd want to see that the LinkedIn page was managed, as in there weren't sort of out of date stuff all over it. On the landscape image, I'd want that to be something they're proud of, probably related to the company.
Hi, I am Rachel Riley, and I'm really pleased to tell you that I will be the host of BizX 2025. 3 days of speaker sessions, interactive events, and a few surprises along the way.
If you're an ambitious business owner eager to unlock the next level of growth, get more information at thebizx.co.uk.
Looking forward to seeing you there.
Whether that's an image of them speaking at an event, or an image of them in a meeting, or an image of the company's logo, or just something that's related to what they're trying to achieve. It's effort, really. If I went into your employees and saw that they work for your company and they've put no effort into how they come across because they're representing the company, then it would have an impact on what I thought of your business.
Yeah, and I asked that just putting myself in the hot seat and just challenging it for a second, because you've given me ideas on this, because I'd probably want to audit based on some of the stuff that you're saying. Definitely effort. I'd want to see we've got a consistent, everyone's got a consistent effort. And why we exist thing that you mentioned here. Imagine if every employee in my business, like that, was really communicated obviously on every profile. That would be beautiful.
Yeah.
And if people could speak to the consumer in a way that it mattered to people, I'd be putting that on my audit list as well.
Yeah,
and
please do.
That's what I was thinking. You got into my head. That's why your people are brand.
Yeah,
that's why your people are brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at James Stimpson and the cobblers. His people are his brand. The service they provide is the brand of that company. At Innocent, the office, they built an office which was really interesting and modern, and loads of people wanted to come and walk around it and take pictures of it. That's more brand. Like, it's not just an office, it's become a brand. The customer services at Innocent, they have it's called the banana phone. And unfortunately, the banana phone itself doesn't work anymore. But if you call the Innocent office, it rings all the phones in the entire building. So anyone working in finance, fruit buying, HR could pick up the phone to a consumer and receive their complaint, because that's their brand. Like the employees are their brand. So an audit of where does your brand sit is an audit of everything any potential customer comes into contact with. That's a LinkedIn page. It's a beer in the pub with an employee. It's whatever.
It's a massive project, though, isn't it?
It's a big old project, but it comes from culture. It doesn't have to necessarily come from a spreadsheet of audit. It comes from setting the culture in a business. And if there's one thing that's sort of critical to the three businesses we've been talking about today, it's that they all have a very significant focus on culture, and they employ people who all want to solve the problem that the business is trying to solve. So all three of those businesses are trying to solve a problem. They have a vision of how they're going to solve it, and everyone within that business is on the bus to help them solve it. And so we'll update their LinkedIn page and we'll speak really well about the business or whatever it is, because they're on the bus to help solve that problem. I know that sounds like it's, I'm talking about big businesses that are achieving big things, but I believe that as much for tiny businesses with 1 or 2 employees, they're still solving a problem and they still have a vision of how they're going to get there, and they still need to be on the bus.
In some ways, it's cleaner and easier when there's 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
It's like the analogy of an oil tanker having to change and communicate to everybody and all this kind of thing. And 2 people, it's jet ski, isn't it?
It is.
Just can grab hold of this stuff and get it implemented with minimal friction. But there's going to be friction because there's battles on your hands.
Yeah, there's loads of battles. It's interesting. Not all businesses especially small businesses, always believe that they're solving a problem. I fundamentally believe that every business is solving a problem. I spoke to some guys starting an ice cream shop, and they were like, well, I said, I was talking to them about this casually, and they said, we don't solve a problem, we sell ice cream. So I just engaged them in conversation about what they were trying to achieve for 10 minutes. And quite quickly it came out that their belief was that restaurants don't put much effort into desserts, that it's sort of the other thing left over. Yeah. And they thought that was wrong, and they thought ice cream could be the dessert that people would leave. They would leave the restaurant after they've had their main course and go and have a dessert experience. And so that's the problem they're solving. They've immediately, accidentally started articulating to me the problem they were solving, and they didn't think they were solving one. But they're quite clearly trying to create a destination to have a dessert, because the problem is that loads of people prefer a dessert to a starter, and they are going to solve that problem for those people.
They are. I mean, but you got me straight away. I've got a couple of quick questions, actually. I got a couple of quick questions to wrap up on. What's been the toughest lesson that you've had to learn in marketing?
The toughest lesson I've had to learn in marketing, apart from all the battles that we've spoken through today, is, I mean, there's tons, but a few that ring really true, is there's a lot of responsibility, because you are putting work out there on a regular basis through whether it's PR or TV or lead generation, like whatever the marketing is, you're putting stuff out there on a regular basis, and therefore it carries a level of risk. It carries a level of risk that could be interpreted in the wrong way, that the consumers might flag it because you've said something wrong, you've been accidentally inappropriate, whatever, that you're ultimately, every bit of work as a marketeer you're putting out into the world carries risk that it could go wrong somehow. It could ruin the reputation of the business. And that weighed heavily on my ability to get a good night's sleep for many years. At Vinted, we were making, I think, 150 adverts a year across Europe. That's a hell of a lot of content. There's loads of money behind. And if you screw any of that up, it's going to waste a lot of money and could ruin the reputation of the company. And so what I learned was to ultimately find peace in the idea, in that risk, and know that you've done all you can.
Accept the responsibility.
Accept the responsibility.
The responsibility is big. There's risks in it. What's the most beautiful thing in marketing?
The most beautiful thing in marketing is when an idea solves a problem, and it just solves that problem so easily, so efficiently, so simply. In the same way with product design, like it's when a product solves a problem really cleanly, it's beautiful. And in marketing, when someone comes out with an idea that just, Big Knit's a pretty good example of that just works. Big Knit, perfect for the retailer, perfect for Innocent, perfect for the charity. It just works for everyone. Like little ideas that solve problems, I think, are just the most beautiful thing.
Best 3 books on marketing?
Oh my Lord. Now, firstly, you're suggesting that I've read a book on marketing. Best 3 books on marketing. I honestly couldn't tell you honestly couldn't tell you if I'm reading books these days. A lot of them are on leadership, in truth. I didn't study marketing. I fell into it and fell in love with it ultimately over my career. And so everything I've learned organically and through working with wonderful people. So I'm not going to be able to tell you what I think.
But who have you learned the most from in marketing?
I've learned the most from some of the managers I've had, specifically at Innocent, I think, who were very detailed, very strategic, and had often come from like strong marketing backgrounds. Maybe had been on the courses at Cadbury's or on graduate schemes, etc. I learnt loads from them, I'm about to kick myself under the table because this sounds horrendously cheesy, but the people you learn the most from in marketing are the consumers. They tell you when you got it right and they tell you when you get it wrong, like they really do. And so marketing, you can read all the theory you want to, but the consumers will tell you whether it's working or not. And so on a daily basis, that's really who you learn it from.
Now that the listeners have listened to this, what's the first action they should do?
The first action they should do is they should look at their plan, if they have one, and if they don't, make one. But the first thing they should do is make a plan, is look at the situational reality of their business and work out where they think they can have the most impact with a marketing plan, and then cut it down to the big bold bets. What are the big bets they're going to take in 2025?
1, 3 or 5.
1, 3 or 5. 1 would be amazing. People are terrified of just doing one thing well because you feel like you should be doing 3, 5 things. No, if you can do one thing well, just do that one thing, put everything behind it. But make a plan and pick the fewest amount of things possible that you're going to put all of your effort and resource behind.
You know, my favourite parts today is, it's 2 things. One is the acknowledgement of the battle. And 2, I feel like I've had a real strategic lesson in marketing. Real strategic lesson. But what's been your favourite part of the conversation?
I've really enjoyed being dragged from here to there. And I've really enjoyed learning that so much of marketing is a battle. It feels almost a bit negative to be talking in the sense of battles.
That's the most positive thing that we can be communicating to everyone right now. You said it.
But it is a positive battle. It is. It's a great thing. It's a great part of business marketing. It's the opportunity to express what your business is doing to as many people as possible. And so it's a great career, and I've absolutely loved it to date, and I've got hopefully loads more years of doing loads more marketing for loads more different businesses. But yes, there are battles, but the battles are really opportunities.
James Peach, thank you very much, sir.
What a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.